Welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Well, hi, everyone, and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks. I'm your host, Lori LeBay, and I'm so thrilled to have the conversation we're going to have today. We are going to be talking with Kathryn Henry, and she has written a lovely new book called A Dime to Say I Love You. And it's really just a beautiful love story, about love and loss and grief and abuse. I mean, you name it, it's in there. And I think you will really appreciate what she's learned through this process and what she's sharing with us today through her new memoir. But before I introduce you to her, I always like to just give everybody a little nudge to go visit Alzheimer's Speaks and check out our free educational resources. We've been curating them since 2009, and nothing's going to cost you anything. You don't have to give us any contact information. It's just there for you to peruse or download, whatever you'd like to do. Same with our sister company, Dementia Map. That is there with global resources, so not just ours at Alzheimer's Speaks, but people around the world and organizations. And maybe you're an organization that would like to be part of that. We would love to have you. All you have to do is click on the button to upload your information, or you can reach out to me and I'd be more than glad to give you a tour as well. So with no further ado, let's go talk with Kathryn. Well, Kathryn, I have been really excited to have you on the show. Your book is extremely interesting, and I love your honesty in the way that you share. I think there's so many lessons in your book that will help the world and people at large deal with, love and loss and grief and conflict and all the things that we all deal with every day, if we want to label them that or not. So I'm going to have you go ahead and introduce yourself, if you don't mind, to our audience.
Great. Yeah. Kathryn Henry, recently have added author to a list of, ways I could describe myself. But that's also quite a complex thing. I'm a mother to pups. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. I'm an aunt. I'm independent director in the corporate world, former executive, started my career with a hard hat and a tool belt, golfer, athlete, widow, a lot of things to describe. But ultimately at the core, I'm just a seeker looking to explore what life has to offer, to teach, to experience, and trying to leave things better than I found them in some way, shape, or form as I traverse the path of this beautiful journey we call life.
Well, I love how you define yourself, because none of us are just one thing. And I think sometimes we forget about all those bits and pieces that we are, not only to ourselves, but to others, and what we've been through and how we've persevered through those things that we thought, oh, how'd I get into this?
Yeah.
But those are all, in my opinion, teaching lessons. And I don't know about you, but for me, I have found when I get into something adverse or something that just doesn't feel right, and it might not be anything major, but I just learned to ask, what's the lesson? There's got to be a reason for all of this. And it's made me stronger. I think it's made me more apathetic and compassionate. I still have to learn to apply those things to myself a little bit more. It's easier
Don't we all
to do it to others. And I think those, might be some things that come out in our conversation as well. But it sounds like you have been one, like when you said you're a seeker of going after the whys. Why is this happening?
Yeah. And the truths, what is the underlying truth of our experiences? One thing that was helpful to me too in a journey of self-love and self-forgiveness was a realization that I am the culmination of all of my experiences. So whether they're the things that I've done that I wish I hadn't done, or the things that I've done that I can find some level of pride or accomplishment in, all of them have conspired to create the person I am today. And it's helpful, I have found for me, in the journey of forgiveness
Yeah.
and regrets, letting go of regrets when things can be contextualized into those life lessons or those learnings or those things that have shaped us to be who we are.
I love that attitude. It's so often, especially on social media and even in our politics, everything is kind of whitewashed. It's like, get rid of the skeletons in the closet. We all have them, and by acknowledging we've been there, we've done that, what we've learned, to me is a great lesson. And it's okay to say that wasn't my proudest moments,
Right.
but this is what I've learned from that, and it's made me a better person, hopefully,
Yeah.
in that. But I think just acknowledging that to yourself, but it's hard to be your authentic self in this world. Because there's just so many people that don't accept that level of honesty. Anyways, that's what I have found. And I used to tiptoe around that, but I really don't too much anymore. I'm 66 and kind of say, screw it. I'm
Yep.
gonna
This
show up.
is what it is.
Yeah. I'm gonna be who I am. And if somebody doesn't like it, they just don't have to be around me, or they don't have to listen to me. And it might sound arrogant, but I don't really feel it's coming from that level. It's just coming from, I want to be who I am. And it's really difficult to not be who you are and acknowledge all the bits and pieces of you. I have found. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, I have. Well, and I guess a flip side of that as well is just I found it to be so freeing to be
Mhm.
able to accept who I am and
Yeah.
just be able to live life with that and know that, in all the imperfection that exists, there is beauty in perfection. And it is what it is. We're all on a journey. And the more I have found, the more I can just center and ground myself in my truth, the more I can bring into the world with authenticity. And, one of the things with my book is, it's deeply personal. And it's not because I wanted my story out there. Frankly, it's not. I mean, that is vulnerability, right? And it's exposing myself on a grand scale, without a doubt. But I really feel in order for us to connect meaningfully with each other, that we have to anchor in truth and in authenticity. And as in my leadership journey as well, I did learn that when I opened myself up and others did as well, the connection was deepened in trust. And it was so much more meaningful. So you kind of have to put yourself out there a little bit, I think. And the rewards can be great. The risk is there without a doubt, but the rewards are also there.
Yeah. And the risk is there every day for everything, if we want to admit it or not. But it is interesting. I really align with you when you make yourself vulnerable, people really appreciate it. Even those people who are really uncomfortable with it and will walk away almost scared or shaky, like, oh, I can't believe I just heard what I heard. They come back later and go, thank you.
Yeah, I've done a few book clubs and talks with the book, and have found that, people who have read it and come in a group setting or whatever, and just conversation is really rich and real and open. And I've had a couple of experiences where I've had someone share that, like, they had trouble getting into the book because it was a little bit more vulnerable than they felt comfortable even reading, about someone else. Like, I shouldn't know this, or this is, and it was more about their journey and their kind of being a little more closed about their feelings or their emotion. And then a couple folks have expressed that it actually served to kind of melt their wall a little bit around how they interact with the world and their loved ones, because they realized, oh, you know what? It wasn't that, it wasn't that bad, hearing those things or opening up or sharing real feelings, like real emotion. Because we all have it. And it's a matter of sometimes how deeply we have tried to cover it up and not face it, because oftentimes we think it's terrible, or it's going to hurt, or it's we shouldn't feel that way, or whatever it may be, when in the truth is we all have feelings. We have emotion, we have experiences, and we've got to process them. They're energy that gets held in the body, and if we don't process them, if we don't acknowledge them, they can sit and exist as dis-ease in the body. And it's been interesting to see how at times folks have been opened up because of the vulnerability that's expressed.
Yeah, like you said, I think it's kind of a trigger for people, like, especially our older adults, that doesn't go outside the house. Not even
Yeah.
everyone in the family knows it. Now you're telling the world,
Yeah.
and, our dirty laundry stays here, if we're not sure how others are going to perceive it, or they don't need to know. But, to me, it's really like living a hidden life,
Yeah.
and I agree with you. The emotions can twist and turn and come out sideways, and that's not healthy for anyone. And I look at all the mental illness and stuff that we have, and I really wonder, is it because people don't feel accepted, because they're not allowed to say how they feel? And I think it's critical, because you can't have a high without a low. I mean, we all know that.
Yeah.
And so the lower you go, the higher your highs are going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the higher you are, the farther the fall, right?
Exactly. Well, it's kind of like, love and loss. I always say, you know, be grateful you love so deeply to hurt so much. Because you couldn't hurt that much if you didn't love so deeply.
Yes.
And that's part of the trade-off, but it's part of the beauty. And just having that mindset for me helped me, with loss of loved ones, to turn it into, and again, you have to feel the grief. I'm not saying don't, but to pull myself out of kind of that swirl and go, how lucky am I to hurt this bad? Because
Yes.
some people never love that deeply, never
Yeah.
have that opportunity. And it's a beautiful thing. I want to have you explain what AFGO stands for. I love this saying, and how you came up with it, and how it's helped you.
AFGO. So I'll give you the PG version, is another frickin' growth opportunity. And that was just something that kept Lisa and I sane at times when we were in the midst of just, feeling like you're just getting piled on with shit, with challenge, with difficulty, with tragedy, when you get a cancer diagnosis and then, you go through a treatment and it doesn't work, or, just things are happening that feel like just way too much to handle. That was our trigger into laughter, because we'd just look at each other and say, yep, it's another fucking growth opportunity. and we'd just immediately be able to kind of go to a place of laughter and recontextualize. And there were enough experiences we had that, when we got through them, we were strengthened. And, Dalai Lama has a quote that, tragedy is our friend. It wakes us up. And, they're learning opportunities, however we want to consider them or contextualize them. But laughter is a powerful healer. And sometimes we just take ourselves a little too seriously, or circumstances too seriously. And so AFGO was one of I'd call it a tool in the tool bag of just processing and dealing and growth and learning and, coming back to the present moment, instead of getting caught up in circumstances.
I love that. I'm a big believer in laughter, and I find so often, and I don't know if you have, but when especially when chronic illness, hits, people like try to smother the laughter. because they don't think it's appropriate to laugh because it's so serious. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, that's a glue that holds us together, guys.
Yeah.
And for me, with loss that I've had in my life over time, I mean, I can go back and even though it's a sad moment, those memories of the laughter, I mean, they just kind of drill into your heart and just, weave their way in and don't go, for me anyways, haven't gone away. I mean, and they just create such joy and comfort and calmness for me.
I was listening to one of your podcasts and you had talked about when your mother had fallen and the
Oh yeah,
laughter that surrounded that. And I could totally picture it. That would be a similar thing, in my family, something like that. And we'd find laughter. It's
yeah.
powerful.
And yet, my husband at the time, he was so, I mean, he was just so anxious and just, this is not funny. This is serious. And I'm like, we can still laugh our way through. It's going to keep her calm. It's going to keep us calm. It's like, let's just work through this so we're not all psychotic. I think it's absolutely critical when in life in general for me, but especially when you're caring for another. I just think
Yeah.
it's just absolutely unbelievable what you can do. And people may think, well, she's talking about cancer. This is about dementia. There's so many overlaps, when we care for one another. And you know what? Some people have both. Some
Yeah.
people are dealing with both. I mean, and maybe it's not one person having both. Maybe it's one care partner, or the care partner and the person you're caring for. I mean, we're not all cloned. We're not all the same, and we have multiple things we're dealing with. It could be heart disease or diabetes, or I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on. I mean, you can't even write them all down. So, I think having a wider perspective of what do all these things have in common. And to me, I have this saying, I've taken caregiver and I've broken it into CAR and e-giver. And CAR stands for conscious awakening of relationships, and e-giver is about our emotional giving, because I really truly think that's 99% of the journey. Yeah, there's tasks we have to do, but it's all on how we deliver it. That helps both sides, and those watching survive it a little bit easier. And so that's again, your stories that you have in there are just so important. I want to ask, because a lot of caregivers go through this, or care partners, carers, care companions, whatever you want to call them. What was it like for you leaving corporate life to be a full-time care partner? I mean, so many people go through this and no one really talks about what that does, to us on an ego level, on a financial level. I mean, there's so many bits and pieces to this.
Yeah. It's not easy because we do derive so much of our self-worth and our self-identity oftentimes from a job. And I was in a very high, growth company, just having so much fun. I was actually on my way to Harvard to get my executive MBA. And Lisa and I would laugh because I started my career with a GED, a hard hat, and a tool belt. So to have progressed from those very humble blue collar kind of beginnings into, corporate executive was quite a fun journey. But in the end, frankly, because of work I had already done spiritually and emotionally on myself, I had kind of gone beyond some of the ego identification with the job. And our relationship was so tight we had already gone through one bout with the cancer, and she had been in remission for 3 years, and then it returned. So there was no question on where I was supposed to go. And frankly, I saw the Harvard journey as really a step along the path that had cleared all my responsibilities of my job so that I could go spend 3 months in Boston. And I just accepted it as, well, this is divine's way of having had me clear my plate, but for something other than what I thought it was going to be. That being said, it was a complete change in my day-to-day life. Now it was doctor's appointments. It was like being the program manager of a very, very complex medical situation that was expected to last a few months because her prognosis was quite dire. And instead lasted almost 5 years. So, it was frankly an experience of finding more meaning than I could imagine in what I was doing. I loved my job. I loved the people I work with. I was inspired every day and I had fun and I was learning and growing. But now I was in a battle to save the life of the individual I held most dear in the world. And there couldn't be anything more purposeful or meaningful than that. And we found the joy in it of, we get to spend our time together. So it wasn't how we wanted to spend our time, but we just kind of accepted the circumstances and dove in together and took on the battle.
Yeah. Well, and I loved when you said your calendar cleared, because I see that so much in my life. It's like, how did this happen? I mean, it's just like, this is like perfect, and
Yeah.
and it could be easy things like radio shows, and people have canceled like 2 weeks in a row, and so, but now four, and I'm like, but then something comes up and it's like, I really needed this time, like,
Yeah.
and so it's just, and that's very minute compared to what you were talking about. But I do believe in God in the universe myself. I'm very spiritual, and people go, well, you have to pick. And I'm like, well, maybe you do. I don't have to.
What do you have to pick?
Yeah, I believe in both. I believe everything works together, and but that's my choice, and not everyone's going to agree with that. And that's perfectly fine,
Yes.
but I do think it's helpful, and for people to believe in something other than just themselves, you know.
Yes. I find it, whatever language we put to it, whether it's in flow with the universe or divine or God or Allah or Buddha or whatever, there is a grander experience at play. And I am an individual who definitely sets goals and is, seeks to grow and learn and open the aperture of life. And then I sit back and let life be life, because sometimes things present themselves that are things you could never have dreamed up, a goal you could never have set. And life presents itself with something that gives you an opportunity to take pause and choose a different direction. And that's really where the beauty of it all, someone comes into your life and you just have a feeling like, wow, I feel like I've known this person forever. Or, you go on a certain path and just things, you uncover something that you might not have ever experienced. And that's where the beauty is. And in speaking in the book about letting go of attachment, where our suffering comes is because we want things to be the way we want them to be, versus allowing things to be the way they are, and then seeing how we interact with that. And so much in our life is out of our control. What other people do, what happened, the weather, you can go down a list of circumstances that are just not in our control. The only thing in our control is how we choose to respond to a situation and who we choose to be in a situation. And if we're attached to things being different than the way they present themselves, you might as well get ready for some suffering, because it's going to happen. Things aren't going to be the way you think they should or you want them to be. And I've just found that letting go of that attachment creates such a much more profound and fun way to exist in the world.
Yeah, I agree. When you mentioned how are we going to show up, I wrote a children's book called Betty the Bald Chicken: Lessons in How to Care. And the whole story really talks about, who are we going to be? Are we going to be Betty, who is ostracized and maybe the ill person in our life? And is being, shooed away from others that once were really active in her life? Are we going to be what I call a barnyard animal that's going to walk away because they just can't deal with it? Kind of like with, divorce or death. People are like, oh, that's a little too deep for me,
Yep.
and
Yep.
so they take a hike. Or, are you going to be somebody in what I call the caring corral, where you show up and you don't have expectations and you're just there to love and support and accept who's
Yeah.
before you? And I don't, and I'd love to ask you this question. For me, I don't believe we're any one person throughout our life. I think we make different choices at different times depending on our situation. And I think that's part of life, to see the difference. What are your thoughts on that?
I completely agree. We are a blank canvas, and we get to, run through this life and have experiences that paint a picture that evolves. And it's like we are everything that we have been in our life, yet we are none of it at the same time. If you really think about it, I'm the young girl that was abused as a 6-year old, yet that in many ways doesn't even exist any longer within. It's morphed, it's transformed, and I am a big proponent of opening the aperture of life. Like, I love to go to different places in the world. I love to see how different people live or exist, what their beliefs are, what makes them who they are. I think that the more we open the aperture of life, the more beauty we welcome into our own life, because we stop limiting ourselves in this very myopic view of how we think the world needs to be, and instead open into more of a life of possibility, of things that we could not have necessarily contemplated. And you don't have to travel the world to get that. We get that through screenplays. We get that through books. We get that through conversations. We get that through welcoming people in our lives that don't look at the world the same way we do, that see the world differently, and not condemning that or damning that, but seeking to understand. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it by any means, but seeking to understand. Okay, and in our political climate right now, we really would benefit more by finding a way to allow people to be who they are and not have it drive hate or division in our hearts. It's not easy when we feel threatened or attacked. But yeah, coming back to your point of, who are we? Like, we are the culmination of all the things that we've experienced. And all of those things still in some way, shape, or form exist within us, yet they've fully transformed into something different. I would have never thought I would live to be the age I am now. I just turned 60. And, when going through my youth, my teen years, I almost didn't make it through my teenage years. And I would have never thought I'd make it to 30 or 40 or 50 or 60. I mean, it's just... Yet here I am, and I could have never dreamed of, the experiences I would have had, and how I would see the world, and can't even probably imagine what I will be if I'm still here in 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah,
And that's the beauty of the journey, is like there's just so much that's possible.
exactly. I always thought I was going to die when I was 40. And so I remember like just panicking. And I felt that all my life when I was younger, at 40, that's it. So I was getting all these 3-ring binders together for my husband because I did all the financials, and, this is here, this is here. And I had this whole closet just filled with all this stuff. And he's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, you're not going to have a clue. I said, so I'm trying to get this organized. And, like you, I'm 66 now, and never thought I would live this long,
Yeah.
and, just kind of took those extra years. Or even with my mom, who lived with dementia for 30, she started
Wow.
having symptoms at 55. And I'm like, okay, I got 10 years. I got 10 extra years, kind of, when I think about it, which I don't think about it a ton, but that's how I look at it. Like, that was an extra gift for me. Speaking of gifts, why don't you define, your book is titled A Dime to Say I Love You. And in the book, you talk about dime moments.
Mm-hmm.
So what to you is a dime moment?
A dime moment is, and I'll go back to how the title came about.
Uh,
So Lisa and I used to leave dimes for each other just in random places to find, and it was a token, a reminder, just to snap you out of whatever you might be doing, and just to plant this seed. You're loved.
mhm.
When she transitioned the first night, I turned over in bed and there was a dime on her pillow. And she has continued to leave dimes for me. And there's a more profound kind of set of experiences that weren't necessarily dimes, but were just a lot of different things that basically a dime moment has come to me. The meaning there is when life just comes and gives you an opportunity to stop dead in your tracks because something has presented itself on your path that stops you from whatever is consuming you in that moment. It might be, for me, it might have been a moment of deep, deep sorrow or grief, or it might be a moment where I'm just like head spinning, like, what am I doing? Where am I going? And then boom, you find that dime, or, you know, something presents itself, and it's you could even say, like, that moment with Lisa's diagnosis when the cancer returned, there was a bit of a dime moment when I realized, wow, I'm not going to Harvard. I am going to San Francisco, and we're going to be battling, cancer. So a dime moment is just a moment that brings us back to the present moment. It's the only place that we really can find joy, where we can find connection, where we can find that depth of humanity. So that's what is throughout the book.
I love that. So it's really a focus shifter from where you were, and it pulls you back
Yeah.
and centers you. I know for me, my mom, if I see cardinals or loons or hear
Mm-hmm.
loons, that's my mom. If I
I
see
would
an
call those dime moments where you just have this, and it's like a washing over of joy, or a
yeah,
presence of energy that just says, wow, there's something grander in play.
yeah, for my dad, it's eagles, and I'll never forget driving. We were driving up to the cabin, and it was my husband Tom and my daughter Danielle, and we were in the car, and we weren't really sure what it was because there was this big shadow over the road. I mean, and it was like a 2 lane, little road, but the shadow spanned the whole thing, and it just stayed with us in the car for probably 5 minutes, and then the eagle went ahead, and it was the
Wow.
shadow and it was just like, woo. I mean, we just got teary. We ended up pulling over to the side of the road and go, did that just happen? I mean, that was like, we just felt so wrapped in love and
Hmm.
so guarded and protected. It was just, ooh, it was, it's still, my dad's been gone since
Yeah.
'01, but it's just those moments that kind of take your breath away, for me. Um, and I would imagine there's different levels of them too. I mean, I can, if I see a feather, I'll think of this, or, there's different little things that can happen in our life. And like you said, it doesn't always have to be a physical dime. It's like, what is your dime, and what does it look like? And it probably is going to look different, representing different things. I would imagine. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I know people who have, like, oh, I get pennies, or just have different connections with a broader sense of connection, energy that
Mhm.
exists, it's beyond the physical. It's beyond a sense of touch or taste or sight or smell. It's something. It can be something very, very different and more profound. And one of the things that I definitely experienced, there's intellectual knowing, and then there's a knowingness that I think exists from experience. Like
Mhm.
when you have felt something, when you've experienced something, it's a whole different level of knowing than what you get from study and intellectualizing something. And when Lisa transitioned, I shifted from a level of knowing, love, and connection on a physical, through the physical senses, to more of an ethereal or spiritual connection. And it's when I came to know without question that we exist in a whole nother, there is our soul, our whatever we call it, this energy, it exists beyond the physical, because she still does exist, even though her body transitioned. And it was a profound change to just how I look at or live my life. Because now things like age, it's like there's this age of the physical body that is going to, it's going to continue to age through just the reality of the materiality of the body. But within, I have an ageless soul that still thinks I should be able to do the things I did when I was, 15 or 20, and I still try to do, whether it's in the gym or whatever it may be, and find the body is not quite as well equipped to do some of these things. But it changes even the relationship with death, because what is death? Like, death is the shedding of the physicality, the body, which is certainly without a doubt a loss. But the death is not of the essence of who I am, or it wasn't the essence of what Lisa was. And it changes the feeling of loss too, when, it becomes recontextualized to, yes, the physical being is gone, but that energy still exists. It's still in the world. And it even can bring a curiosity and a wonderment, around death, instead of a fear.
Oh, I agree. When my dad was dying, he had brain cancer. I would just know things. And like, he was in the hospital one time, and I called the nurse and I said, "You have to get in with my dad. He's trying to crawl over the bed rails. He has to go to the bathroom." And it's like 1:30 in the morning. And she's like, "Okay, cuckoo's nest. what's up with you?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I woke up out of a dead sleep. Will you please just go check on him?" And she left the phone and came back like 10 minutes later. She's like, "How did you know that?" I said, I don't know, but through our relationship, I ended up taking some psychic courses, which was really interesting. It was very life-changing for me, and how interconnected we are. And even like when my mom died, my mom would come to me in dreams. And I'll never forget, one night she woke me up and was like, "Hey, I'm not sticking around forever. Finish that obit." And I, at 2 a.m, I'm up and I'm like, okay, let me get this finished, and it was just this kind of sense of humor and things. But I think people are so afraid of death or a bigger picture. But for me, I just found such relief in having that deeper connection. And I talk about, and I still haven't defined it. I had it one time and then I lost all my notes, but I look at unconditional love, and I thought unconditional love was unconditional love. Like, it was one phase, one level. And I think there's so many levels of unconditional love as you let go of what you thought was right or wrong, or, how life was supposed to be. And it's just, to me, it was just an unbelievable journey, and continues to be, when I get out of my own way, and the comfort that I find in terms of, like you said, exploring how other people live and what their beliefs are. And it just makes life so much easier to live when you have a broader perspective, and you don't have this narrow, this is right and this is wrong, and don't cross the line, and we're going to cross the line. We're going to make some wrong decisions along the way. That's just part of life and the lessons that we learn. That's, again, my belief, and not everyone will believe in that. But I just, gosh, there's just so much more to life than I ever thought there was, growing up as a child. And it took me till I was probably in my 40s to really make that shift and open myself up for even little things like meditation, which I think is such a calming tool, and makes you feel not so alone in the world, especially when you care so deeply, and so many others around us, physically, family, friends, they don't really understand the depths of what you're going through. I mean, because it's kind of unexplainable in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Yeah. We have no clue what others are going through, and what motivates and inspires in many ways. And the more that we can allow people to just be where they are, try to meet them where they're at with some level of compassion, and uplift each other. So instead of in this competitive energy, like I'm a big time competitor. I love to compete, in sports and things like that. And there's really great, healthy kind of competition, but we can be a little overly competitive in the way that, we see it emerge when people cheat, or when they like winning becomes the only thing at all cost. And that's when we start putting our integrity in the trash.
Yeah.
Those are compromises that we can't make. I would joke, you talk about mistakes, and, we're all going to make mistakes. And I would talk with my leadership team and say, look, we're all going to make mistakes, fail frequently, fail often, learn from it and get over it. But also know that not all mistakes are created equal. Some of them can get you in an orange jumpsuit. So make sure yes, we're going to make mistakes and we want to learn from them, but also know, the mistake of, not checking your second parachute, your safety chute when you're jumping out of a plane, that could cost you your life. So just know that, not all mistakes are created equally. Some have much different, consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Kathryn Henry. She is the author of A Dime to Say I Love You. We've been having a wonderful conversation. You can always find her at her website, kathrynhenry.com. She's on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. We'll have all of that information for you. I also want to just give a shout out to Q for Good. They are my webmasters. I adore them. Websites can be complicated. They can be right up there with caring for somebody. You don't know what's coming at you or when it's going to hit, and to have somebody who understands and communicates well and is timely, to me, is really important and has reduced my stress a ton. So I always just like to throw them out and give them a little poke, and maybe help you out too if you're interested. But Kathryn, I want to get back to you. Did you have some daily rituals that you guys did to kind of help you through, the process of being ill, and then, helping you heal after the fact as well?
Yeah, without a doubt. The formal daily ritual, I'd say for me was really meditation and taking time for some spiritual or growth kind of study. Because I would find that to just be space where I could ground and get present and have a deeper awareness of, what I was feeling, what I was processing, and just kind of ground in presence of really gratitude practice of what we had to be thankful for. Healing practices, and the way Lisa and I got through was, it could be as simple as just a dinner together. That was a routine. Every night we'd sit down, we'd have a nice dinner, we'd talk about what the day was. We'd get out in nature as often as possible. Hopefully, if we could, doing an athletic endeavor, golf or hiking, walking with the dog, those kinds of things. Just sometimes we think, and we did trips. Lisa was Hawaiian, and our family had a home there, and I had a timeshare, so we'd go to Hawaii. That'd be a great healing, nourishing place. But frankly, it was the little things. It was the little laughter. It was the meals. It was sitting and watching football with the dog in our laps, with crab dip. It was, just those things that became the precious moments. The other thing though, when she transitioned, because that was a lot of loss and grief that, those, that depth of emotion can really consume. I found physical exertion. I had a heavy bag and I would just wail on that bag, punching, kicking, kickboxing, yoga, just physical, having to actually sweat it out and cry it out and just let out those emotions and process them in a conscious and purposeful way. So those were some of the things, and well, of course, family and friends. That was, we had a lot of love. We were blessed to have a lot of love in our lives.
Yeah, I love when you're talking about the little things because I think so often people think it's the big things. And I have found, for loss or difficult times, it is the little teeny weeny things that just bring joy and calmness. And I often talk about my mom ended up being in a nursing home for 14 years. She wanted to move in because my dad was there. And in a moment of clarity, she said, because she was going to live with us and had been living with us, and she said, I want to move into the nursing home. And I'm like, personally offended. Well, what? We discussed this. We've talked with everybody and their brother. We had a plan. And she just looked at me and she said, Lori, I love you. Because I asked, do you not feel comfortable here? Are we not doing something right? And she said, no. She said, but your dad and I have been together 49 and a half years and I'm not leaving him now. And it was like how she even had that moment of clarity and knew that. It was like, okay, I'm going to make that happen. And so, I talk often about just, as the disease progressed, one of the safest places and most comfortable places to be was just sitting next to her, maybe in the couch, not saying a word, but just being in someone's presence. And I think in this busy, busy world that we live in, we miss those moments. And to me, they're the treasure chest of life. And I can't scream that stuff, from a mountaintop high enough to try to get people to slow down and really, it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be fancy. It's just, that energy, literally connection of allowing yourself to feel peaceful.
That's that is the reason that the meditation practice, which now it's, for me, it's not even necessarily the formal sitting, although I still very much love that and can do that. I can go on retreats and enjoy that very, very much. But in the really difficult times, taking the time to be present and to be quiet and to quiet what I call the monkey mind, because we spend so much time just thinking about what I need to do or what I should have done or what I didn't do or why I didn't do that or, just what I have to do. It's like, it's just this constant chaos going off in our minds. And when we quiet that and when we can get to a place of quieting that, we become present. And there is such a peacefulness that can exist. And some folks would say, oh, you're a crazy tree hugger or whatever, but there's a beauty of connection, even with nature, with plants, where, I've had times where, and it could be in the fall, it could be in the spring, where like the trees are speaking, like they've got these spectacular colors. You go into the Northeast in fall and see the fiery reds and the different, just the oranges and the yellows. And even here in Napa Valley, we get it in our vines. It's beautiful, but there's so much speaking just in nature in and of itself. And so much to your point about some of the maybe psychic connection. When we quiet, we can connect on different levels. And words aren't needed. Like you really can connect so meaningfully and don't need those words. And it's the frenetic pace in what's going on in our world right now. We need some more of that quiet calming because this energy is, it's not healthy. It's just, it's like having a constant, if you think about those leaf blowers or something when someone's working in the yard, if you sit there and listen to that long enough, you will go crazy. It's like, it's something that's done and I get the reason. I mean, I use them myself around my yard, but this constant noise, it's like static energy and noise that is an irritant. And getting quiet and getting into a peaceful place can unlock so much just presence and peacefulness and joy. I hope more people can find their way there.
Yeah, I think so many people are afraid of the quiet. I used to have put a sign up on my office door and tell my assistant, nobody in thank God we were like at the end of the hallway, and I'm like, just nothing, no phone calls, no people, no nothing. And I would just take, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, depending on what it was. And I would shut my shades. I would put on some background music. I'd light a candle and, turn off the lights and just be alone. And, because my job could get pretty hectic, and it's like, okay, then it was like I just came up and I was ready to go again. It just, nothing was as heavy.
It's nourishing.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
And I can relate to the fear of the quiet, because I went through that in years, because this has been a journey of decades. And, in the early days, I was like, the journey within is what I call it. It's the journey within to see what exists within. And you've got to get through the noise to get to the quiet and the peace and the nourishment. I was afraid, I thought all these experiences that I'd had, that, I was bad, I was terrible, I was self-destructive at early points in my life. And so, there was this talk about difficulty getting through to anywhere near a place of self-forgiveness or self-love, because I thought that journey within was going to just be encountering all these terrible, terrible things that I was not, prepared to even begin on that journey. And sometimes we need therapy to help us with that. Sometimes we need, we need to surround ourselves with love, with things that help us on that journey. It's not an easy thing when we have trauma embedded throughout our psyche and even our physical body. But it is a worthwhile journey to get the help you need to go on that journey, find the quiet, find what works for you. Because they're not monsters inside. Actually, there's beauty, and you just need to get through the things that are trying to stop us from going on that journey to a more peaceful existence.
Yeah, learning to kind of kick your inner critic to the curb. Go, okay, you've had your say.
Yeah,
Get off the podium. My turn now. Yeah, makes a huge, huge difference. On your grief journey, was there a moment that you can think of where you just started to frame things differently at all, or was it just a process? Because sometimes people go, oh, there was like a light switch where it made sense for me to reframe and look at things differently, maybe do things differently. And others go, no, it wasn't that easy. It took me a while.
there were moments that were more defining than others on the journey, without a doubt. I think about, and this was after her transition and being in the depths of grief, sitting in meditation, and this was in a retreat, but my own process of meditation, and just realizing that I had tears streaming down my face, just literally. Yet I was in a place of calm and peace, and it was almost like a nourishing, and it was actually very profound. And it happened more than once where I would, and it was like this realization of processing something on such a deeper level than I could have even put words to. And being able to sit and be in moments like that, and not trying to identify, not trying to assess what it is, as much as just allowing it to be and to be present with it. Those were experiences, those types of experiences were ones that helped me to separate like myself from the grief, like realizing that I am not the grief. The grief is an experience that I am having, but it's not me. And it doesn't define me. And there are other experiences, the joy, the laughter, the AFGOs, whatever they are, that also flow through, but they aren't me. So it then became more of a profundity, really, of a journey that said, well, what is me then? If I'm not that, what am I? And those were really transformational moments on what that inquiry became with life, with the experience of life and what that even means.
Yeah, I know for me, when you were talking about, that's not me, that's grief. But people would always come up and say, well, what do you like to do? And I remember going, I don't know anymore. I mean, I haven't done anything for me. You sound like you had a more balanced care journey in some ways in terms of, and maybe I did too, and just haven't acknowledged those little things that I did, with my mom or with my dad or whoever it might be in the process who I was caring for. But big picture wise, as an individual alone, without that person in my life, is just like, I don't know. And then I just started traveling because I was like, I really, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that anymore. So I have to kind of look and see and take in what's even out there to participate in. It was a really weird thing for me, but it was very healthy. I think for me to do, I think a lot of people thought I was nuts and having a breakdown or something, because that wasn't me just to go take off and travel alone. But I got so much out of it. And again, it was learning how to be alone when you're so together, where you feel you feel as one, I guess.
It's
um
the loss is, of a spouse like that, or when you're in that kind of care partner space.
mhm,
And I would say Lisa was as much a caregiver as I was. So
mhm,
I that was a gift because she would push me out while we were on the journey, while she was still alive, and
mhm.
say, you need to go do things and come home and tell me the stories, because we're not going to live in the space of me dying 24/7. But when the transition happened, the loss is profound. It's You go from your spaces filled with stuff to do every day, where you can't necessarily even think about anything other than the day-to-day processing, and then all of a sudden it's just empty. It's just
Yep.
empty. There's nothing. So what do you fill that with, or how do you deal with that? So I mean, I certainly experienced some of that as well, and can relate, because it's such a huge change and it's such a physical loss, literally, like
Mhm.
literally. So, and I think it's different too, dealing with dementia, Alzheimer's, which, I faced that with in-laws, with parents, with friends, spouses, and the like. And Lisa's mother, Lisa's father, Lisa was present and very much could engage almost to the end,
Mhm.
verbally and consciously on what was happening. Whereas the dementia, you don't necessarily have someone who's gonna or can look out for your best interest as the care partner,
Mhm.
because they don't know. They don't necessarily have that capacity and that connection, which is, it's like losing the individual again and again and again while they're still with you, which was one of the most difficult things, that we faced when Lisa's mother was declining with dementia. Is she was like, my mom is here, but she's not here anymore,
Yeah.
and how big of a loss that was, how difficult that was.
Yeah, and it just kind of rears its ugly head at times, or they can do something one moment and they can't do it the next, and then all of a sudden, oh, they can again. And learning to appreciate what's still there at
Yeah.
whatever level it's able to show up. But I think, part of what helped me is to always believe that my mom's soul was always present. So even when she
Yeah.
couldn't talk, she would have, there was just this connection between us. Or there would be these moments of clarity, like when she wanted to move into the nursing home. And that was earlier on, kind of mid stages. But I'll never forget sitting in her room one day. She was having seizures, which she never had. And they're like, we better update her DNR and paperwork and stuff. So I went in, and my mom's just sleeping. And the nurse goes out to make copies, and I'm crying. I'm like, Mom, is this still what you want? And my mom, out of a dead sleep, picks up her head, turns it towards me, and goes, Yep. And then goes right back to sleep. But it was like she knew
Wow.
that I needed to hear that, even though we had had that conversation 10 million times.
Yeah.
It was just like, oh, it's getting real, real, real. And so I
Yeah.
think always believing that they're still there, they're still present. And even if they can't answer, I would get a feeling of calmness or what direction to go if I would concentrate on that. I think can be really helpful in
Yeah.
that as well. So I'm hoping our listeners got as much out of this conversation as I did. I think, again, we have so much more in common on our caring journeys than differences. And it's always wonderful to hear, how did somebody else cope? What have they learned along the way that maybe I can apply? And maybe not everything will resonate with you. That's okay.
Yeah.
We're not trying to make you into a clone of somebody else. Everyone has to find, their own fit. And I think it's important to have those conversations. So again, Kathryn, thank you so much for being with us today. People can again go to her website, kathrynhenry.com. She's on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and we will have that all in the show notes for you. And as always, to our audience, I ask that you be a giver of hope. Like, click, and share. Not because I follow the numbers, because I don't even believe in the numbers. Half of them are bots out there, and there's so many different ways to share. It's hard to really track all this stuff, though we've been told it's possible. I've just seen numbers change over the years so much. What motivates me to do what I do, and I think what motivates probably Kathryn to do what she does, is believing that we can help one another
Yeah.
by sharing our stories and our resources. And so by liking, clicking, and sharing, you've got people that you don't even know are dealing with this, because a lot of them are still thinking it's their dirty laundry and it doesn't come out of the house and they're not comfortable to share. But the more people can hear about resources and personal stories, the more likely they're going to open up the door and grab those resources for themselves. And
Yeah.
again, we can't make anybody do that, but we can make it a much more comfortable setting. So thanks, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful week. And don't forget to check out Alzheimer's Speaks free resources. We have a ton of them there. We've been curating those since 2009. Same with our sister company, Dementia Map, which has global resources on it as well. Have a wonderful holiday season, and we'll talk soon. Bye now.